Welcome, traveler. Pull up a seat close to the fire. Today's explainer plunges us straight into the suffocating atmosphere of the Ink Ribbon Paths. It reads exactly like a grim folktale you'd whisper in the dark to keep the shadows at bay. It's a brutal parable of survival where the stakes are literally your humanity and your physical form. So let's just jump right in and unpack the Lantern Bearer's creed. We've got to start with this absolutely chilling reality. To carry the lantern is to carry a sun that consumes the self. Think about how that completely flips the script on the classic hero's journey. These lantern bearers, they aren't your typical noble guides holding up a torch to help lost souls find their way. No, bearing this specific light into this specific darkness is a grueling act of self-sacrifice. It literally eats away at who they are.
And that light? It needs fuel. But where does it come from? Take tallow, for instance. It's a recycled residue harvested directly from the boneless. Yeah, the exact same monsters they're desperately trying to repel. They're literally scraping the structural remnants off these horrors to fuel a fragile circle of light that keeps those same horrors at bay. Talk about a terrifying closed-loop ecosystem of survival, right?
So you might be wondering, why on earth would anyone subject themselves to this? Well, the bearers don't walk these paths just to play escort. They walk to keep the physical world intact. Literally. That fragile circle of light is a structural anchor. Without it, the very geography around them would just fold in on itself. They're the only thing holding reality together against a deeply unnatural dark.
Knowing those apocalyptic stakes, how do you even prep for a walk like that? Before you even think about stepping onto the path, you have to undergo the rite of the hollow chest. First, you drop into a deep meditative state. Then, it gets incredibly horrifying. You have to actively visualize your own internal organs crumbling into gray dust. Why? Because you must leave absolutely no secret fear for a creature known as the Offhucker. If that thing descends, your chest has to be emotionally and spiritually empty. Nothing for the dark to feed on.
All right, so you're on the Ink Ribbon path. Survival now comes down to a hyper-strict physical rhythm known as the liminal stride. You have to move in this perfectly synchronized rhythm through the mist. And whatever you do, you can never, ever look at the trees, specifically their rubbery bark. Because if you acknowledge them, you invite the forest to become flesh. You also have to maintain a low, buzzing hum the whole time. It acts as a sonic camouflage, trickling through the mist to blend in with the predatory silence around you. As you can imagine, this journey exacts an unimaginable toll. By the time a bearer reaches the end of the ribbon, they're fundamentally changed. They become just as pale, just as shapeless as the horrors they face. Their own humanity is actively sacrificed to provide what the source material beautifully calls a flicker of a window, a tiny, fragile pocket of safety. Everyday travelers pray for that window, but they never truly comprehend the cost.
But listen, the horror definitely doesn't stop at the edge of the woods. That's where you hit the wailing thresholds. If you reach this point, the path simply ends in this gray, pulpy depth. It isn't a destination. Actually, scratch that. It's not even a place. It's a graveyard. It is the final resting place for those who completely broke under the crushing weight of the journey. And what exactly happens to the ones who break? They get trapped in a permanent, agonizing state known as liminal decay. The fallen here don't just die, and they certainly don't cry out for rescue. Instead, they're completely stripped of their agency, doomed to become a sound without a source. They are twisted into lures, weapons designed by the boneless to peel back the resolve of any living soul trying to cross. Which brings us to arguably the most chilling concept in today's explainer. The voices you hear out there, they aren't ghosts. They are the architecture itself. The mist, the stones, the very ground you're walking on literally vibrates with the memories of the fallen. This environment weaponizes those absorbed memories, calling out names in a cadence that is just too perfect. It uses familiarity to drag you down. To survive this impossible threshold, you have to master the silence of the morrow. It's a state of absolute, brutal, emotional detachment. When you hear a beloved voice call your name out of that mist, you have to refuse to answer it. You have to completely deafen your own heart, swallow your humanity, and just walk forward without shedding a single tear. It's the ultimate psychological test.
Because I've got to warn you, failure here is instantly fatal. If you break that silence of the morrow, if you pause, even for a split second, to weep for a voice you recognize, your shadow starts to thicken. The earth beneath your feet turns soft and incredibly hungry. It prepares to break you down. turning your sturdy, living ribs into more gray dust just to feed the valley. Out here, empathy is literally a death sentence. So we're left with this horrifying dichotomy. On one side, you have the living, the lantern bearers, who have to strip away their fears and become pale, shapeless vessels just to hold a flicker of light. On the other side, the fallen, the dwellers of the threshold, trapped in liminal decay, reduced to mimicking lures for the boneless. You either lose your humanity to hold the light, or you lose your form entirely to become a permanent piece of the dark.
The ultimate, grim truth of these paths boils down to this. To survive the threshold is to realize that the most dangerous mercy is to listen to the echoes of what has already been replaced. Let that sink in for a second. To make it through, you have to accept that those voices are just echoes of people who are already gone, replaced by the hungry architecture of the threshold itself.
But the logic of this threshold, it only gets deeper, pointing toward even darker mysteries. Just look beyond the Wailing Threshold. The lore hints at grim practices, like the iron shrouds used to bury the literal dust bags of the fallen. And then there's the City of the Unmarked, an eerie destination of perpetual light, but where absolutely no one has a name or an identity.
As the campfire dies down on our journey today, I want to leave you with a chilling question. What calls to you more? Should we examine those iron shrouds used to bury the remnants of the fallen? Or should we explore the terrifying, nameless, day-to-day existence within the City of the Unmarked, where the light never fades but identity is completely stripped away? The threshold is vast and its horrors are many. Think about which of these unspeakable mysteries you dare to uncover in our next explainer. Until then, keep your lanterns lit.